over here. Just you and me. I just wanted to say, come.
Welcome again to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. What we are going to do today on our trucks is we're going to do basically what you would get out of a 30,000 mile service. So we're going to change all the fluids. We're going to change the engine oil, the coolant, the transmission fluid, transfer case fluid, both front and rear differentials. We're going to talk about how you would inspect the brakes. We're going to show greasing the U-joints on the front and rear drive shafts and the slip yoke. And we're going to change the air filter. Things we're going to be using for our reference is, again, we're going to be using the Toyota Factory Service Manual. And I've got some pages that you can see. So if you actually had one of these, it might correspond, depending on the year, to the right page. This page right here talks about the torque spec for the engine oil pan drain plug. It's 29 foot-pounds. AT14 talks about the torque spec for the drain plug for the transmission, automatic transmission. That's 15 foot-pounds. Both the drain and fill plugs for the transfer case, those are both 27 foot-pounds. And then the front differential, it shows that the fill plug is going to be 29 foot-pounds and the drain plug is actually torqued to 48 foot-pounds. And then the rear differential shows that the drain plug is 36 foot-pounds and also the fill plug is 36 foot-pounds. So those are all the pages in the factory service manual. So to reiterate, it was SA91 for the rear differential. It was SA22 for the front differential, TR-5 for the transfer case, torque specs, it's AT14 again for the automatic transmission drain bolt, LU-3, that's for the lubrication pages for the drain plug for the engine oil pan. Getting to the parts, for the air filters, we're going to change the air filters on both of our rigs. The second number is the transmission drain plan crush washer. The washers for the transfer case fill and drain plug, 90430-A as in Adam 0003. That is the washers for the drain and fill plugs for the transfer case. 12157-10010. That's the crush washers for the fill and drain plugs for the front and rear differentials. That is the drain plug washer for the engine oil pan. Always put a fresh gasket on the engine oil pan drain plug. And then another reference to find out the fluid levels, 2000 owner's manual. So in the back of the book, it gives you all the levels and types of fluid, all the service specifications. Engine oil talks about your cooling system, your automatic transmission, or if you have a manual, your differential, your transfer case, all that stuff, and the type of grease you use for getting your chassis. A cheat sheet. So this is a cheat sheet for all the torque specs. We're going to be torquing all these fill plugs and drain plugs. So the engine oil is on the top. The front differential fill plug is second. The front differential drain plug is the third one. The rear differential fill plug and drain plug are both same, 36. The transfer case and drain plugs are both 27. And the automatic transmission drain plug is 15 foot-pounds. So that's just reiterating those torque specs. Here's the fluid amounts. According to the owner's manual, it says if you drain the oil and change the filter, it's 5.5, but that's not correct. You actually have to fill it about 6 quarts to get it to the full. The engine coolant shows a capacity of 9.5 quarts. When I drain that and not do a full flush, you're basically changing out about 2 gallons, 8 quarts. The automatic transmission fluid, this is really wrong. The owner's manual says 2.1 quarts, but it's really actually about 5 quarts you're draining out when you do a drain and refill of the pan. The transfer case shows that you should use 75W90, and that's a little bit over 1 quart. The front differential also uses 75W90, and it's about 1.2 quarts. The rear differential, they say that if you're in an area above 0 degrees Fahrenheit, you should use 90 weight, but we couldn't find 90 weight, and I've always kind of used 80W90 or 7590 in these applications, so I'm just going to go ahead and use 80W90 for the rear, and they say that's only for below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, but I think it's fine. That's what we're going to use today. And then for your rear differential, the capacity, if you have a rear locker, the capacity is almost 3 quarts, 2.9. And then if you don't have the rear locker, the capacity is 2.6 quarts. So we're going to use this. This is stuff we bought at O'Reilly. So at 80W90 for the rear differential. I'm going to use this Stay Loop 7590 for mine, and then for we don't have enough for both of rigs, so we're going to use some Valvoline for Sean's truck. And then for the transmission, you just want to use a automatic transmission fluid that's compatible with Dextron 3 specifications. So Mercon 5 is a replacement for Dextron 3, so that's what we're going to be putting in our automatic transmission. And then these are the air filters that we just bought at Toyota. We bought 2 of them. The thing that's helpful is to buy a little pump, so you can pump the fluid out of these containers into your transfer case or your differentials. So it's a handy little thing to buy. You can get these at any auto parts store. So the next step, we're going to get the truck fully off the ground, supported on the frame by 6-ton jack stands. And this way we can remove the wheels and show you how to take a look at the brake pads in the front and the rear shoes in the rear. So we have the truck supported completely on 6-ton jack stands. On the front, we got the 6-ton jack stands resting on the frame, and then in the rear we have the 6-ton jack stands sitting underneath the rear axle. All 4 tires are off the ground, so they're spinning, so we can later check the brakes. And we're gonna do a basic front to rear method. So the first thing we're gonna do is change the engine oil. So we've got a 14mm socket with a 3/8 drive with a small extension. We're just gonna break this free. Shouldn't take a lot of force. There you go. And you can see the washer there. It might be kind of on there. And just, you can set it back down on the ground and let that drain out. When we get ready to fill this, this should take about six quarts, right around there, a little bit. Mine usually takes 6 to get it full, but I don't know why that is. But I'm going to just get that washer off because I'm going to put a new washer on. I'm just going to leave it for right now, wait till it drains. The next thing we're going to do is get at the oil filter, and the oil filter is up yonder. I don't know if you can see it. It's that black with like the checkerboard looking thing. It's right there. And sometimes I can get it just with my hand, but I'll most likely have to get a wrench on there just to break it free, an oil filter wrench, and I'll show you what that looks like. Filter wrench is a very handy tool. You can see how it expands and then gets tighter depending on how you do it, how you turn it. So the way the filter sits on the engine, this would be the driver's side of the engine. This is where the filter sits, and it sits just like this at a right angle to the engine, facing out towards the left wheel well, or driver's side wheel well. So seeing how this tightens down, and it's lefty loosey, righty tighty, so I'd want to turn it counterclockwise. So I get it, I open it up by turning the handle this way, and then you bring it down and see how it clamps on there. It's really tight. I'm holding really tight with my right hand, and I could spin it. So that's how you would get the filter wrench on the filter when it sits on the engine. You would open it up like this and then turn it to where it compresses down on the filter and it grabs it. First, you want to try to see if you can just get your hand in there and twist it off counterclockwise. But if it's too tight, you can use this filter tool. Another type of filter tool is this one. It's this is not actually the size any. This is for a different size filter for my Subaru, but it has a 3/8 drive attachment, so you can get a 3/8 drive ratchet. Maybe you need an extension, and you slide it over. And you could see, I don't know if you could see how it's formed, but it basically forms exactly to the outside of this filter. It has these, like, you know, little flat edges, and it slides right on top. And this is another type of filter wrench you could use to get your filter off. And now we'll go out to the truck, and I'll show you how you would get the tool on the filter as it sits on the engine. Okay, now I've got the filter wrench on the filter as it sits on the engine. And so just like the orientation I showed you on the workbench, I'd want to spin this filter counterclockwise, which would mean I would bring the tool towards me this direction. So I'd want to turn it to where this filter is twisting this, I can't get enough, this way, in this direction. If that makes sense. Sometimes you get confused if you're looking at things at a different angle, but you'd want to turn it, the filter, so it's going that direction, towards the way my finger's pointing. And then once you get it loose enough with the filter wrench, then you can get your hand on it and then spin it off. And when you get close to where you feel like it's about to come off, you know, go a little slower and then try to take the filter out with the this side facing up, so you make less of a mess. So as you spin it off the last threads, tilt it this side facing down, this side facing up, and then bring it out this direction right here, right along the lower radiator hose. That seems to be the best method. Then, you know, put it down on your drain pan, drain the rest of the oil out, and then recycle the filter properly. And then when you put it back on, you would turn it the other way, so then you would turn it clockwise. You tighten it up. Some people just like to get it hand tight, and if you feel like you're getting good enough grip and your hands aren't slippery, that should be good enough. Sometimes I'll give it just an extra turn with the filter wrench, maybe about 1/8 of a turn, nothing more. And just remember, when you put the new filter on, to put a little bit of fresh oil on the rubber O-ring before you put it on to the engine. I hope this will make this clear for those that have never done an oil change of how you would get the filter on and off. Okay. I got an oil filter wrench on the filter, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a turn to break it free, and then I should be able to take it off the rest of the way by hand. Probably should be able to get it now by hand. Oh, I got it. A little bit more. Still on there pretty good.
Really crank that thing down, huh?
Not really. I only give it just a little bit of turn after it. There we go. That's looser. So this is going to make a little bit of a mess as it drips down. When you get it loose enough, the key is to try to keep it as upright as possible while you're taking it out. And so we're going to have Sean move the camera so we don't douse it in oil. I'm just taking it out towards the bottom radiator hose, and then just take it and drain it the rest of the way into your catcher. And just let it drain a little bit more. So you see that the old washer just didn't want to come off, so I'm just tapping it off, and it dropped in the oil catcher thing. No big deal, we can get it later. My rag is on. I'm just cleaning off the surface where the oil filter sits. Clean part of the rag to make sure that it's a clean surface for your, and then just wipe some of the oil that's dripped down on your differential and the other parts. We're going to be ready now to put the new filter on, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, here's the old filter. So one thing that probably pretty rare to happen, but it's happened in the past, is that this rubber seal for the oil filter stays connected to the engine. So make sure that your old oil filter, the rubber gasket is with it, so it's not attached there to where you try to put the new filter on, it's going to cause a leak. So just double check that. And then when you get ready to put the new filter on, after you've cleaned the surface of where the oil filter sits, dip your finger and lubricate the rubber seal. That's how you prep it before you put it on. Go same route that you took it out, up along the lower radiator hose, and spin it on, hand tight at first. So this is my path going up through here, past the upper radiator hose, and then you're coming down and spinning it on. There's a little hose here that kind of causes it a little bit harder to get started, but I get it hand tight, and that should be good enough. If you're really worried about it, you can give it like a little bit of turn. So I'll get my filter wrench on there. Dip my hand. Just give it a little extra turn, and that should be good enough. Clean off the surface of where your drain plug goes. Put a new drain plug washer, and then thread it on hand tight. Now I did give you the torque specs for these. I'm not going to bother torquing it because I've tightened enough drain plugs. I've done hundreds of oil changes, so I kind of know how tight to get it without stripping anything, and that's good enough right there. So, but if you live and die by the torque wrench, then go ahead and use the torque specs so you don't make a mistake and strip it. But like I said, I've done this a lot of times and never had a problem. Okay, so we are now topping off the oil. I'm using 5W30 Castrol. It's a partial synthetic blend. It's for high mileage, and so it's best if, especially, well, anytime you're doing a fluid change, make sure you got your drain plug back on. Make sure if you did the engine oil filter that your filter's on, and then top it off before you start doing anything else. So I know mine usually takes a little over 6 quarts, so I'm going to put 6 quarts in to start off with, and then recheck it after I run it a little bit. So this is a 5-quart container I have right now. It takes over 6 quarts every single time, because I've put 30,000 miles on this thing, so this is probably the 10th time I've done an oil change, and it always takes over 6 quarts. I'll add one more. No, I don't get it. Why? But part number for the oil filter for our 6-cylinder engines, that's the part number. So don't make a rookie mistake. Make sure that after you fill it and you don't get sidetracked on doing something else, put your cap back on. This is a pretty common thing that happens. Someone goes driving off and then oil goes spewing all over the engine compartment and you start smoking because it gets all over the exhaust and the hot engine. So make sure you put your cap back on before you move on to the next thing you're doing. On a 30,000 mile service, your coolant is most likely going to need replacing, but I already replaced mine just recently. I put a new radiator in, I put a transmission cooler, and this is a transmission filter. So I put all this in recently, like within the last 2,000 miles, so I'm not due to change the coolant. I'm not going to waste 2 gallons of coolant just to show you. But if you look at my video on my YouTube channel, Timmy the Toolman, for putting in the external transmission cooler with the radiator change and the thermostat, you'll see how I did it. But basically you got this petcock valve. You open this up, you drain the fluid into a container. I use an old Prestone antifreeze container. You'll usually drain out about 2 gallons, and then you close it, and then you open up your radiator cap and you refill, and then check it after it's been warmed up. And then also in that video I explain how to take out the reservoir and drain the reservoir. So if you look at that video for the installing the external transmission cooler, you'll know how to drain and refill the coolant. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drain and fill the front differential. Front differential, these can be problematic. This is a 10 millimeter Allen. Instead of having a big hex head, Toyota, in their infinite wisdom, which I'm not really happy with, used a recessed Allen fill plug and drain plug. And the first time I tried to get mine loose, the fill plug, I stripped it. And it's very common. Guys end up using welding on a big nut that they can get a big socket on there. So that's the drain plug. And then the fill plug is right here. This is the one I ended up stripping out accidentally. But now I have some better tools, and I've put this on not as tight as hopefully as the last time. And I think maybe changing this, I was the first person to actually change this, and maybe that's why it was still welded on there. So just be careful not to strip this, and I'll show you the tool I used to get it off. So what I got is a 3/8 drive with a 10 millimeter Allen socket. And so do yourself a favor, make sure you can get the fill plug loose first, and before you drain the fluid, because you don't want to drain the fluid first and then realize you can't get this fill plug out, because now you're going to be stuck. And that was kind of tight, but I broke it free. So now I know that I can get the fill plug out, so I'm just going to leave that loose for right now, not take it out all the way. I don't think it's going to come spilling out because I don't think it's overfilled. And now I'm going to work on the drain plug. This is the drain, same thing as a 10 millimeter on there better than I thought. The 1/2-inch drive, see if I can break it free with a bigger wrench. Now I got a 1/2-inch to 3/8 adapter to the 3/8 10mm socket. There we go. And that's loose. So you're going to want to get your drain pan ready to go underneath there. I just made a huge mess. Don't do that, people. Don't make a mess. That came out with authority. Okay, we got our mess cleaned up. The fill plug, you can see, drain plug is bigger. You've got the big fat drain plug, and you got the fill plug on my other hand right here. This drain plug didn't have a washer. Okay, we wanted to show you a couple of things. The drain bolt washer for the front differential, the parts guy originally said at Toyota that they were all the same, but this copper washer right here, this is the one that goes to the drain plug on the front differential washer, this washer here. So it's 90430-24003 engine oil pan drain plug washer, this blue one, and that's 90430-12031. If you it's probably recommended you should change this. Since I didn't have it with me while I was doing it, I just put the old one back on, but probably best to replace that washer when you drain the front differential. And always, I'm just going to put it in back the way it is. That's how it was when I changed it the last time. It didn't have a washer, I think. Then again, maybe it did. Let's see. So screw it in hand tight. And then just use your wrench, cinch it up. Again, you have the torque specs for this. We gave it to you at the beginning of the video. I'm just going to cinch it up pretty good. That's tight. Okay. Now we'll remove the fill plug. Now we got to get our little pump set up with the 7590, and we're just going to top it off. And if you're wondering how high or how much to put in, well, when you're pumping it in, when it starts to drip out, you're at the top. So you basically fill it to the top of the bottom of the threads of the fill plug. So that's all you got to do is just keep on pumping until it starts to pour out a little bit, and you're good to go. You're at the right level. So the fluid just sits basically right at the bottom of the threads there. So what you do is you get your little pump into your oil container, and then you take the tube, you stick it inside the differential, and you just start pumping away.
Okay, we got it primed, so we're just pumping the fluid in there. You don't need to see all this, but let me show you one thing here.
So the crush washer, the orientation is, it's got like a flat side and then like a rounded side, and that's the crushing side, the rounded side. So you put the flat side towards the plug and the rounded side towards the differential. So you can see how it's starting to drip out. See how it's oozing out of the top? That means that the level is just above the bottom of the thread, so it's full. So then put your plug in and tighten it up. Now this is all provided you're on a, you should be level. So whatever you do when you put it up on jack stands or however you're doing it, make sure that it's level, because when you fill it, it's got to be level to the ground, not at an angle. And then we'll just tighten this up. Okay, people.
Quick, put the washer on, put it back on maybe. You could do that?
Too late.
Okay.
It would have been a good idea though. Okay, so viewing public, don't be a retard like Timmy the Toolman, because it does have a washer. See this copper washer? I'm glad I double checked. When I took the drain plug out and it made a mess, this thing shot into the drain pan. So I thought maybe it didn't have a washer, but it does indeed have a washer. So I'm glad we double checked that. So anyways, don't do what I did and waste fluid. So now I have to pump this thing all the way back up. So now that you got your washer back in to the bottom and you got that tight, fill it up and then you tighten your fill plug. Should be good right there. Next we're doing the transmission fluid. So this is just a drain and refill. We're not doing a full flush, and when you do it this way, you're usually able to get out about 5 quarts of transmission fluid. There you go.
That looks pretty good. It's clean.
Yeah, so just let this drain for a little bit. I think we'll start draining the transfer case while this is draining out. So some people like to, when they do their transmission fluid, to drain it, do a complete flush. But what I do on my truck is I drain and refill the transmission every 10,000 miles. Transmission fluid should last about 30,000 miles. So I figure if I do it at a 10,000 mile interval, I'm going to keep the fluid in pretty good shape. The capacity of our trucks is about 12 quarts. So I'm getting about 40% of the fluid out doing it this way. And it keeps the fluid in really good shape. I don't really think you have to do the complete flush, but if that's what you like to do, then go ahead and do that. So now we're going to start draining the transfer case at the same time. So here we're looking at the transfer case. This is your drain plug. They look like they're both 24 millimeter. So just like the differential, I'm going to make sure I can break free the fill plug first. So I got a foot long breaker bar, 1/2 inch breaker bar on a 1/2 inch socket. Let's see if I can break it free. Yeah, I didn't over tighten it last time, so I'm good. So that broke free. So now I could attack the drain plug and break that free and drain that. Get this started draining. Hopefully not make a huge mess like last time. So we'll let the transfer case drain, and then we're going to get back to the transmission. The transmission looks like it's done draining, and we'll add some oil to that. So make sure on your old drain plug, that you remove the old washer. So again, the way the crush washer or the orientation is, it's got a flat side and then a little bit of a rounded side. The rounded side goes towards the pan of the transmission, the flat side towards the bolt. Wipe it clean and then put it on, tighten it up. This is a smaller bolt, so if you are just doing it like me and not worrying about torque specs, just be careful not to over tighten it. That's good right there. And now we'll fill it with fluid. Okay, we're filling it with not necessarily the greatest funnel. This is all I had. Let me clean this out a little bit. Okay, we're using a a funnel, not the greatest funnel for this, but this is the only one we had. I misplaced my other transmission fluid funnel. It's going to take a little longer to get the 5 quarts in there. Okay, so after it's drained out, replace the washers with fresh washers. They end up getting like a little bit of a groove in them. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see there's a little lip on the inside, so it kind of forms to the transfer case. So it is recommended that you put new washers on. Put it on the fill plug in first. Oh, I'm making a huge mess over there. It's fucking comedy, man. Jesus Christ. There should be the Timmy the Toolman comedy show. Fucking A. Oh, kiddies, this is how you don't do it. Okay, that's tightened up. Just check it a little bit more here. Here I'm just pumping some more 75W90 gear oil into the transfer case fill plug. That little bit you see dripping out is not at full. I just started. As soon as it starts pouring out, it's full. There we go. And it started pouring out. Now we just put the fill plug in.
Okay, that's tight.
Okay, for the rear differential, it's also a 24mm socket. Have your parking brake loose so you can get your wrench in here. This way you can use a socket rather than an open-end wrench. So you can just bend it out of the way if it's loose and then break it free. So now I know I can fill it if I drain it. And so it is a little bit full. There might be a slight tilt to the... So now I'm going to break free the drain plug. Get our drain pan underneath here. Let me see if I can go 4 for 4 for making a mess. Let me see. Been pretty good so far. Oh, and I drop it. Consistent. And this will drain a little faster. If I open this up, hopefully not all over the place. There we go. The rear differential fluid looks a lot dirtier than the front, which means, you know, it's obviously got more use than haven't had it in 4-wheel drive that much. But you remember what the front looked like?
It's clean as a whistle.
Yeah, it looked clean. And these didn't look so much clean. So these are supposedly crush washers. See, I put the wrong washers in then, right? They're supposed to be crush washers on these?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I put the wrong washers in last time, I guess. Okay, we got the drain plug back in. And we got a new crush washer on it. And we're just cinching it up. That's good right there. Okay, so to get the air filter out, it's pretty darn simple. All you gotta do is just push these little tabs loose, lift this up, filter comes sliding out. You can see that it's pretty dirty. I mean, let's give a comparison here. So let's take the new one out. I've been driving some dusty fire roads, so that comparison, you can see how much cleaner the new one is. It was due. And so you just slide the new one in. Just like that. Oh, nope, it doesn't even fit in the other way. So you have to have this little flange side towards the back. Just slide it in. There's a metal clip down there. You can see that. That kind of helps keep it in. Push it into place. Pop it in. That's it. Okay, so while you have it jacked up, a good thing to do is to check your brakes. So you might need to tap on this a little bit, loosen it up. But if your brakes are adjusted right, you should be able to shimmy this off. And so you can get a look at your shoes, just see how if there's a major wear. Also, a thing that you might see if you are having a major problem with your axle seals is this could be coated in gear oil. That's what happened to me when I checked my brakes for the first time when I bought this thing 2 years ago, is that this whole area was coated in gear oil because the inner axle seal inside the axle housing failed, and so the gear oil was able to get into the brakes. And so if you do have ABS on your truck, there is one way you could check to see if your inner axle seal is working. See right here, that's your ABS sensor. You could take this little bolt off, you can pull the sensor out, and then you have the ABS gear on the inside, and it kind of works like a water wheel. You can turn the axle and then see if it's picking up any gear oil. If you got gear oil in this area of your axle, your inner axle seal sits around in here. That means it's failed. And so you'll have to pull the axles and fix that. And it's kind of an involved thing because you need a machine shop to press on all the parts and take them off. But this is one way you could see if your inner axle seal is still working, is by pulling out this ABS sensor and then looking inside there to see if the ABS wheel is picking up any gear oil, because there should be no gear oil in this area. So just look at the pads. These are pretty new pads. I got these put on like last year. So you can see there's a lot of meat to them. That's the metal part of the shoe, and then all this thickness right here, that's all brake shoe. So mine are in good shape. So this is an example for the rear, and then let's go to the front. So for the front, you're just looking at your rotors to make sure that they're still pretty smooth, that there's no major imperfections. And then you could get on the inside here and you could see the meat of the pad. So you see right here underneath the spring, this is the rotor. And then the rest of this width, about 1/4 inch, what you see here, right, my finger's right on it, that's all brake pad. So this is one way you can see how much brake pad you have left on your front brake pads. So you just do this with both sides. You haven't worn down your pads. This should be a pretty smooth surface on your rotors, and mine are really smooth. So this is the point where after you inspect your brakes, if you didn't buy your tires at a place that rotates them and balances them for free, you can rotate the tires. With radial tires, you usually go front to back, so straight back, not at a diagonal, but the right front goes to the right rear, the left front goes to the left rear. Or I bought my tires at America's Tires, and they're a good tire company, and they will rotate and balance for the life of the tires, which is cool. So I'm not going to rotate mine. I'm going to take it to America's Tires. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to grease the U-joints, the slip yoke. So I'm going to grease the rear U-joint. Wipe off the fitting first a little bit, the Zerk fitting, and then I'm just using a lithium-based molybdenum or whatever they call it. It was in the video, the earlier the video, but I use the same grease for all the U-joints, and then I did use a different one for this rear slip yoke because of the problem I had in the past. So you just push the grease gun fitting onto the Zerk fitting and just give it a few pumps, and you'll see grease squeezing out of these areas. So the grease goes through the fittings and it will squeeze out on these sides. So you just look to see if it starts to squeeze out. And I just heard it squeeze out a little bit, and that's enough. It kind of makes like a little bit of a squirting sound. For the slip yoke, I'm using a special Ford XG8 I made a video of. It's one of my first videos, so you'll see it if you look for it. I'm just going to give this a few pumps. Just going to give it like 4 pumps, 5 pumps, and that's it. Get it off of there. I have the transmission in neutral so I could spin this drive shaft. Now I'm going to go to the front. I'm done with this special one. This is the only one, the rear slip yoke, that I put the special Ford grease. So the rest of them I'm going to do with the same grease. So you got this big joint right here. This is the double cardan joint. You grease it. You grease these two here, and then as you turn it, you'll see another one right here. So you grease that, and then that should be it. Those 3 spots. Just wipe them off a little bit, and just give them a couple squeezes till you squeezes out a little bit. I already squeezing out a little bit there. That's squeezing out. The double cardan is a little bit harder to determine if it's full. And that's it. And then we'll go to the front drive shaft. So this one right here you're looking at, this is for the front drive shaft slip yoke. The Zerk fitting for, I don't know if we'll see how they come up from here. The Zerk fitting for the U-joint is right here. So this is for the slip yoke for the front drive shaft. This is one in here is for the U-joint. So I'm going to give those a few pumps. And that one's already full. I barely used the 4-wheel drive, so that's going to just give it a few pumps in there. And then we just got to hit the front part that goes to the front differential, and that will be it. And that's it. Pretty much a couple squeezes is all you need, unless it's totally dry. Okay, so we just cinched up all the lugs, didn't torque them down yet. We took the truck off the jack stands. Now the weight of the truck is on the wheels, and now I'm torquing them to spec. I'm torquing them to 85 foot-pounds. Okay, so once you get done with replacing all your fluids, and before you put the skid pans back on underneath the engine, turn on the engine, run the engine, make sure that there's no leak coming from the engine oil filter, from the drain plug. Just double check to make sure your front differential plugs look good and there's no leaking from there. And then after you run the engine for a while, shut it off. Double check to make sure that your engine oil is at the correct level. If it's a little low, add a little bit more. Like I said earlier, mine usually takes a little over 6 quarts, which is contradictory to what's actually in the owner's manual. And then also take it for a test drive. Come back with the transmission in warmer, so like up to somewhere around 150 degrees. If you don't have a way to check the temperature, just drive it down the freeway for a little ways, come back to your garage, wherever you're working on it, and then check to see that the transmission fluid is in the hot range. And then you should be good to go. Then you can put your skid pans back on and double check everything to make sure you didn't forget anything, and you'll be good to go. So you just watched how you can do a 30,000 mile service on your Toyota 4Runner by changing the engine oil, the transmission fluid, both differential fluids, the transfer case fluid. We did a brake inspection. We greased the U-joints, the slip yokes, and the double cardan joints on the front and rear drive shafts. And we spoke about how you would do the coolant, but we didn't actually do it. But you can see that in one of my other videos. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, just comment and I'll get back to you. Take care.